The Individuals with Disability Act, or IDEA, requires each state to develop a State Performance Plan, Annual Performance Report, or SPP-APR, that evaluates the state's efforts to implement the requirements and purposes of the IDEA and describes how the state will improve its special education implementation. The SPP-APRs include indicators that measure child and family outcomes and other indicators that measure compliance with the requirements of the IDEA. The indicators in Part B of IDEA fall into three monitoring priority areas. 1. Provision of free appropriate public education, or FAPE, in the least restrictive environment, the LRE. 2. State exercise of general supervision, including child fine, effective monitoring, the use of resolution meetings, mediation, and a system of transition services. 3. Disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups in special education and related services to the extent the representation is the result of inappropriate identification. The South Carolina Office of Special Education Services must set targets on the indicators that involve student performance. We have a series of recorded presentations in order to set the stakeholder feedback on the proposed targets. Indicator 2 is about dropout rate, which is the percent of youth with IEPs dropping out of high school. Four-year adjusted cohort graduation rate definition. Quote, the four-year adjusted cohort graduation rate, hereafter referred to as the four-year graduation rate, is the number of students who graduate in 4 years with a regular high school diploma divided by the number of students who form the adjusted cohort for the graduating class. From the beginning of 9th grade, the students who are entering the grade for the first time form a cohort that is subsequently adjusted by adding any students who transfer into the cohort later during the 9th grade and the next 3 years, and subtracting any students who transfer out, immigrate to another country, or die during that same period, end quote, as gathered by NCLB High School Graduation Rate Non-Regulatory Guidance. South Carolina has historically reported on a modified dropout rate except when we were still held accountable to the EDFAC's actual dropout rate. Reporting on the modified dropout rate does not give an accurate picture of what is happening, as you can see in the slide. We are proposing that the new targets align to what South Carolina is actually being held accountable for, and that the targets be based off the EDFAC's data. The State Performance Plan requires us to set what they refer to as targets and what we think of as our goals. Just like IEP goals, targets need to be rigorous yet attainable. If we were to create a SMART goal, like the goals required in IEPs, the goal would read something similar to, by the end of the school year 2025, South Carolina will have a graduation rate for students with disabilities of 18.63%, as measured by the EDFAC's report. The post-secondary outcomes group will have goals related to meeting this target that is updated yearly and discussed later in this presentation. Indicator 2020 changes. Dropout rates were set to align with the graduation rate goals. The dropout rate account for 9% of students who may not make their 4-year graduation cohort, but re-enroll to continue working towards their graduation or a credential. Through the year, target is high. This works off the previous year's actual dropout rate and will help buffer the possible effects of the pandemic. The overall 6-year goal is rigorous. Dropout rate, which is indicator 2. State and LEA performance is based on adjusted dropout percentage. Dropout rate is not part of current LEA determinations, and dropout rate may be added to LEA determinations in the future. Dropout rate is not currently part of the risk assessment in the SOTA. The post-secondary outcomes team does look at the dropout rate of tiered districts to help determine the needs and the supports. Post-secondary outcome focus group related goal. In order to further LEA capacity to increase career development, student skills, and CTE enrollment and collaboration for students with disabilities, the PSO team will provide resources and supports that will assist LEAs with implementing high-leverage, evidence-based, equitable practices that address post-secondary outcome needs. In order to monitor progress, much like monitoring of IEP goals, we will use a variety of data points to monitor progress of the goal, such as complete the SOTA implementation manual, using the data of dropout rates, graduation, Indicator 14 survey results, SWD CTE enrollment, task data, SC ABLE data, and interagency data as needed. PSO has varied activities towards achieving the goals. Build LMS or Learning Management System modules for CTE collaborations, South Carolina High School Credential, Transition Best Practices, and Indicator 13 compliance, and Indicator 14 compliance. Inform LEA and SOP of PSO implementation guide and assist the LEA SOP in setting up graduation teams. Utilizing tasks to help LEA and SOP implement best practices defined by the PSO essential program components as determined by the school graduation team. Build interagency such as CTE, higher ed, voc rehab, SC ABLE, SC DEW, and DDSN relationships to build establish strategies, trainings, and initiatives related to the PSO goals. This will support LEAs in achieving the long-term goal of increasing graduation rate. Stakeholder feedback will be considered in embedding additional activities.